Double feature. Two classic short stories by Anton Chekhov. Grisha. Grisha, a chubby little boy born only 2 years and 8 months ago, was out walking on the boulevard with his nurse. He wore a long, wadded burnous, a large cap with a furry knob, a muffler, and wool-lined galoshes. He felt stuffy and hot, and, in addition, the waxing sun of April was beating directly into his face and making his eyelids smart. Every inch of his awkward little figure, with its timid, uncertain steps, bespoke a boundless perplexity. Until that day, the only universe known to Grisha had been square. In one corner of it stood his crib, in another stood nurse's trunk, in the third was a chair, and in the fourth a little icon lamp. If you looked under the bed, you saw a doll with one arm and a drum. Behind nurse's trunk were a great many various objects. A few empty spools, some scraps of paper, a box without a lid, and a broken jumping jack. In this world, besides nurse and Grisha, there often appeared Mama and the cat. Mama looked like a doll, and the cat looked like Papa's fur coat. Only the fur coat did not have eyes and a tail. From the world which was called the nursery, a door led to a place where people dined and drank tea. There stood Grisha's high chair, and there hung the clock made to wag its pendulum and strike. From the dining room one could pass into another room with big red chairs. There on the floor glowered a dark stain for which people still shook their forefingers at Grisha. Still farther beyond lay another room where one was not allowed to go, and in which one sometimes caught glimpses of Papa, a very mysterious person. The functions of Mama and nurse were obvious. They dressed Grisha, fed him, and put him to bed. But why Papa should be there was incomprehensible. Auntie was also a puzzling person. She appeared and disappeared. Where did she go? More than once Grisha had looked for her under the bed, behind the trunk, and under the sofa, but she was not to be found. In the new world where he now found himself, where the sun dazzled one's eyes, there were so many papas and mamas and aunties that one scarcely knew which one to run to. But the funniest and oddest things of all were the horses. Grisha stared at their moving legs and could not understand them at all. He looked up at nurse, hoping that she might help him to solve the riddle, but she answered nothing. Suddenly he heard a terrible noise. Straight toward him down the street came a squad of soldiers marching in step, with red faces and sticks under their arms. Grisha's blood ran cold with terror, and he looked up anxiously at his nurse to inquire if this were not dangerous. But Nursey neither ran away nor cried, so he decided it must be safe. He followed the soldiers with his eyes and began marching in step with them. Across the street ran two big, long-nosed cats, their tails sticking straight up into the air and their tongues lolling out of their mouths. Grisha felt that he, too, ought to run, and he started off in pursuit. "Stop! Stop!" cried Nursey, seizing him roughly by the shoulder. "Where are you going?" "Who told you to be naughty?" But there sat a sort of nurse with a basket of oranges in her lap. As Grisha passed her, he silently took one. "Don't do that!" cried his fellow wayfarer, slapping his hand and snatching the orange away from him. "Little stupid!" Next, Grisha would gladly have picked up some of the slivers of glass that rattled under his feet and glittered like icon lamps, but he was afraid that his hand might be slapped again. "Good day!" Grisha heard a loud, hoarse voice say over his very ear, and looking up, he caught sight of a tall person with shiny buttons. To his great joy, this man shook hands with Nursey. They stood together and entered into conversation. The sunlight, the rumbling of the vehicles, the horses, the shiny buttons all struck Grisha as so amazingly new and yet unterrifying that his heart overflowed with delight, and he began to laugh. "Come! Come!" he cried to the man with the shiny buttons, pulling his coat-tails. "Where to?" asked the man. "Come," Grisha insisted. He would have liked to say that it would be nice to take Papa and Mama and the cat along too, but somehow his tongue would not obey him. In a few minutes, Nurse turned off the boulevard and led Grisha into a large courtyard where the snow still lay on the ground. The man with shiny buttons followed them. Carefully avoiding the puddles and lumps of snow, they picked their way across the courtyard, mounted a dark, grimy staircase, and entered a room where the air was heavy with smoke and a strong smell of cooking. A woman was standing over a stove frying chops. This cook and nurse embraced one another, and sitting down on a bench with the man, began talking in low voices. Bundled up as he was, Grisha felt unbearably hot. "What does this mean?" he asked himself, gazing about. He saw a dingy ceiling, a two-pronged oven fork, and a stove with a huge oven mouth gaping at him. "Ma," he wailed. "Now! Now!" his nurse called to him. "Be good!" The cook set a bottle, 2 glasses, and a pie on the table. The 2 women and the man with the shiny buttons touched glasses, and each had several drinks. The man embraced alternately the cook and the nurse. Then all 3 began to sing softly. Grisha stretched his hand toward the pie, and they gave him a piece. He ate it and watched his nurse drinking. He wanted to drink too. "Give, nursey!" "Give!" he begged. The cook gave him a drink out of her glass. He screwed up his eyes, frowned, and coughed for a long time after that, beating the air with his hands, while the cook watched him and laughed. When he reached home, Grisha explained to Mama the walls and his crib where he had been and what he had seen. He told it less with his tongue than with his hands and his face. He showed how the sun had shone, how the horses had trotted, how the terrible oven had gaped at him, and how the cook had drunk. That evening he could not possibly go to sleep. The soldiers with their sticks, the great cats, the horses, the bits of glass, the basket of oranges, the shiny buttons, all this lay piled on his brain and oppressed him. He tossed from side to side, chattering to himself, and finally, unable longer to endure his excitement, he burst into tears. "Why, he has fever!" cried Mamma, laying the palm of her hand on his forehead. "What can be the reason?" "The stove!" wept Grisha. "Go away, stove!" "He has eaten something that has disagreed with him," Mamma concluded. And shaken by his impressions of a new life apprehended for the first time, Grisha was given a spoonful of castor oil by Mamma, a trifle from real life. Nikolai Ilyich Belayev was a young gentleman of St. Petersburg, aged 32, rosy, well-fed, and a patron of the racetracks. Once, toward evening, he went to pay a call on Olga Ivanovna, with whom, to use his own expression, he was dragging through a long and tedious love affair. And the truth was that the first thrilling, inspiring pages of this romance had long since been read, and that the story was now dragging wearily on, presenting nothing that was either interesting or novel. Not finding Olga at home, my hero threw himself upon a couch and prepared to await her return. "Good evening, Nikolai Ilyich," he heard a child's voice say. "Mama will soon be home. She has gone to the dressmaker's with Sonia." On the divan in the same room lay Alyosha, Olga's son, a small boy of 8, immaculately and picturesquely dressed in a little velvet suit and long black stockings. He had been lying on a satin pillow, mimicking the antics of an acrobat he had seen at the circus. First he stretched up one pretty leg, then another. Then, when they were tired, he brought his arms into play and at last jumped up galvanically, throwing himself on all fours in an effort to stand on his head. He went through all these motions with the most serious face in the world, puffing like a martyr, as if he himself regretted that God had given him such a restless little body. "Ah, good evening, my boy," said Belayev. "Is that you? I did not know you were here. Is Mama well?" Alyosha seized the toe of his left shoe in his right hand, assumed the most unnatural position in the world, rolled over, jumped up, and peeped out at Belayev from under the heavy fringes of the lampshade. "Not very," he said, shrugging his shoulders. "Mama is never really well. She is a woman, you see, and women always have something the matter with them." From lack of anything better to do, Belayev began scrutinizing Alyosha's face. During all his acquaintance with Olga, he had never bestowed any consideration upon the boy, or noticed his existence at all. He had seen the child about, but what he was doing there, Belayev, somehow, had never cared to think. Now, in the dusk of evening, Alyosha's pale face and fixed dark eyes unexpectedly reminded Belayev of Olga as she had appeared in the first pages of their romance. He wanted to pet the boy. "Come here, little monkey," he said, "and let me look at you." The boy jumped down from the sofa and ran to Belayev. "Well," the latter began, laying his hand on the boy's thin shoulder, "and how are you? Is everything all right with you?" "No, not very." It used to be much better. In what way? That's easy to answer. Sonia and I used to learn only music and reading before, but now we have French verses too. You have cut your beard. Yes, so I noticed. It is shorter than it was. Please let me touch it. Does that hurt? No, not a bit. Why does it hurt if you pull one hair at a time and not a bit if you pull lots? Ha 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 ha! I'll tell you something. You ought to wear whiskers. You could shave here on the sides here, and here you could let the hair grow. The boy nestled close to Belayev and began to play with his watch chain. Mama is going to give me a watch when I go to school, and I'm going to ask her to give me a chain just like yours. Oh, what a lovely locket. Papa has a locket just like that. Only yours has little stripes on it, and Papa's has letters. He has a portrait of Mama in his locket. Papa wears another watch chain now made of ribbon. How do you know? Do you ever see your Papa? No, I... Alyosha blushed deeply at being caught telling a fib and began to scratch the locket furiously with his nail. Belayev looked searchingly into his face and repeated, "Do you ever see your Papa?" No. Come, tell me honestly. I can see by your face that you are not telling the truth. It's no use quibbling now that the cat is out of the bag. Tell me, do you see him? Now then, as between friends. Alyosha reflected. You won't tell Mama? He asked. What an idea! Honor bright? Honor bright. Promise! Oh, you insufferable child. What do you take me for? Alyosha glanced around, opened his eyes wide, and said, For heaven's sake, don't tell Mama. Don't tell a soul because it's a secret. I don't know what would happen to Sonia and Pelagia and me if Mama should find out. Now listen, Sonia and I see Papa every Thursday and every Friday. When Pelagia takes us out walking before dinner, we go to Anfel's confectionery, and there we find Papa already waiting for us. He is always sitting in the little private room with the marble table and the ashtray that's made like a goose without a back. What do you do in there? We don't do anything. First we say, how do you do? And then Papa orders coffee and pasties for us. Sonia likes pasties with meat, you know, but I can't abide them with meat. I like mine with cabbage or eggs. We eat so much that we have a hard time eating our dinner afterwards so that Mama won't guess anything. What do you talk about? With Papa? Oh, about everything. He kisses us and hugs us and tells us the funniest jokes. Do you know what? He says that when we grow bigger, he is going to take us to live with him. Sonia doesn't want to go, but I wouldn't mind. Of course, it would be lonely without Mama, but I could write letters to her. Isn't it funny? We might go and see her then on Sundays, mightn't we? Papa says, too, he is going to buy me a pony. He is such a nice man. I don't know why Mama doesn't ask him to live with her and why she won't let us see him. He loves Mama very much. He always asks how she is and what she has been doing. When she was ill, he took hold of his head, just like this, and ran about the room. He always asks us whether we are obedient and respectful to her. Tell me, is it true that we are unfortunate? Why do you ask? Because Papa says we are. He says we are unfortunate children, and that he is unfortunate, and that Mama is unfortunate. He tells us to pray to God for her and for ourselves. Alyosha fixed his eyes on the figure of a stuffed bird and became lost in thought. Well, I declare, muttered Belayev. So that's what you do? You hold meetings at a confectioner's? And your Mama doesn't know it? No. How could she? Pelagia wouldn't tell her for the world. Day before yesterday, Papa gave us pears. They were as sweet as sugar. I ate too. But listen to me, does Papa ever say anything about me? About you? What shall I say? Alyosha looked searchingly into Belayev's face and shrugged his shoulders. Nothing special, he answered. Well, what does he say, for instance? You won't be angry if I tell you. What an idea! Does he abuse me? No, he doesn't abuse you, but you know he is angry with you. He says that it is your fault that Mama is unhappy, and that you have ruined Mama. He is such a funny man. I tell him that you are kind and that you never scold Mama, but he only shakes his head. So he says I have ruined her? Yes, don't be angry, Nikolai Ilyich. Belayev rose and began pacing up and down the room. How strange this is, and how ridiculous, he muttered, shrugging his shoulders and smiling sarcastically. It is all his fault, and yet he says I have ruined her. What an innocent baby this is. And so he told you I had ruined your mother. Yes, but you promised not to be angry. I'm not angry, and it is none of your business anyway. Yes, this is. This is really ridiculous. Here I have been caught like a mouse in a trap, and now it seems it is all my fault. The doorbell rang. The boy tore himself from Belayev's arms and ran out of the room. A moment later, a lady entered with a little girl. It was Alyosha's mother, Olga Ivanovna. Alyosha skipped into the room behind her, singing loudly and clapping his hands. Belayev nodded and continued to walk up and down. Of course, he muttered. Whom should he blame but me? He has right on his side. He is the injured husband. What is that you are saying? Asked Olga Ivanovna. What am I saying? Just listen to what your young hopeful here has been preaching. It appears that I am a wicked scoundrel, and that I have ruined you and your children. You are all unhappy, and I alone am frightfully happy. Frightfully, frightfully happy. I don't understand you, Nikolai. What is the matter? Just listen to what this young gentleman here has to say, cried Belayev, pointing to Alyosha. Alyosha flushed and then grew suddenly pale, and his face became distorted with fear. Nikolai Ilyich, he whispered loudly. Hush! Olga Ivanovna looked at Alyosha in surprise, and then at Belayev, and then back again at Alyosha. Ask him, Belayev continued. That idiot of yours, Pelagia, takes them to a confectioner's and arranges meetings there between them and their papa. But that isn't the point. The point is that papa is the victim, and that I am an abandoned scoundrel who has wrecked the lives of both of you. Nikolai Ilyich, groaned Alyosha, you gave me your word of honor. Leave me alone. Belayev motioned to him impatiently. This is more important than words of honor. This hypocrisy, these lies are intolerable. I don't understand, cried Olga Ivanovna, the tears glistening in her eyes. Listen, Alyosha, she asked, turning to her son. Do you really see your father? But Alyosha did not hear her. His eyes were fixed with horror on Belayev. It cannot be possible, his mother exclaimed. I must go and ask Pelagia. Olga Ivanovna left the room. But Nikolai Ilyich, you gave me your word of honor, cried Alyosha, trembling all over. Belayev made an impatient gesture and went on pacing the floor. He was absorbed in thoughts of the wrong that had been done him, and as before was unconscious of the boy's presence. A serious grown-up person like him could not be bothered with little boys. But Alyosha crept into a corner and told Sonia with horror how he had been deceived. He trembled and hiccuped and cried. This was the first time in his life that he had come roughly face to face with deceit. He had never imagined till now that there were things in this world besides pasties and watches and sweet pears, things for which no name could be found in the vocabulary of childhood.